Welcome again to At CCLI. I'm Paul Herman, and today we're here with Zach Williams. He's the guy that's rocked our CCLI charts and everybody else's with his hit Chainbreaker. Zach, it's great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with Chainbreaker. Can you tell us the story?
It was the end of a 4-day writing session. I'd been in Nashville for like 4 days, and honestly, I was ready to go home, see my family. I had, really going into the songwrite that day, I was meeting Mia Fields for the first time. I'd written some songs with Jonathan Smith, and we were all going into the room to write together for the day. And I just knew she had written some pretty, big songs, yes. And I was a little intimidated going in. And honestly, I had nothing I didn't have anything written down like to show anybody so I was kind of going in like, oh gosh, I hope this goes good, And I just remember walking in, and she had such she kind of just had this presence about her, and she made everything in the room feel a little bit easier. And I just thought it was so cool, and I got to hear a little bit of her story about just being under Hillsong leadership. And she said, so what's your story like? I don't know anything about you. And I kind of gave her the life story, and we talked for honestly like 2 hours, me and her and Jonathan, just sharing, everything that I'd been involved in. And at the time, me and my wife were really involved in a prison ministry at our church. And after hearing my story, she just blurted out, "You should write a song called Chainbreaker." And I kind of laughed, I said, "Can we do that? Hasn't there been a song called Break Every Chain out for the last 2 years?" And she was like, "It don't matter, you can write whatever you want." And I thought, okay. And she was like, "And you could do it and sing it." She was like, "You're a big guy, She was like, you need to write a song called Chainbreaker." So I was just like, okay, let's do that. And we started messing around with the piano, and literally the first couple of words out of my mouth was, "If you've been walking the same old road for miles and miles," and they were like, "Oh." And then we 15, 20 minutes later, we had written that song.
Really?
It was one of those songs that just 15, 20 minutes after talking for 2 hours about it, we wrote the song. And I just remember leaving that day. I was driving back to Arkansas, and I thought, wow, I think I was just part of something really special. This song could be something. And I just started praying that God would take the song and just use it all over the world. I'd prayed for a song a year before that. I was listening to a song by Third Day called Soul on Fire. Yeah. Sitting in my office at church thinking, God, just give me a song like that everybody in church is doing, everybody's gonna pick up on. And a few months later, that song was played for the label as just during a meeting, and it kind of, it's where it came from.
So you prayed for it, but when it happened, did it surprise you?
Oh yeah, it did. I don't know why it did, because God has done so many cool things in my life over the last few years. But yeah, it was just, to be living in a prayer that literally prayed 6 months ago, and just seeing what God was doing. I kind of felt like I was on the front lines of everything, and started immediately hearing stories from people just all over the U.S. And I was just like, wow, this is really happening. And just kind of watching it rise up the charts, I was just like, this doesn't happen. I tell my wife every day, I was like, how is this real? But that's the power of God. When he has something, I think me and you were talking about it earlier, when he anoints something, then look out, just let him do his thing. So it's just been cool to be a part of it.
Amazing. Yeah. There's another song of yours, Old Church Choir, love it, and especially love the title. That's a great one. Tell us about that one.
Well, that song for me, I grew up in just, a little bitty town, 1,200 people. And I just remember as a kid, my grandparents and my mom and dad took me to all these little small backwoods churches, just the picture of this old white church on a dirt road. I went to a lot of those. And I just remember going to a lot of those, a lot of revivals. My grandparents were big into these gospel quartets and things like that. And at an early age, I remember having this encounter or this experience with God that, to be honest with you, kind of scared me, because I feel like he kind of showed me at an early age I was going to be doing something with music, but I didn't play music at all. And so I kind of ran from that feeling. It kind of scared me, but I just remember it feeling like this song that he put on my heart at an early age. And so when we wrote Old Church Choir, I wanted to write a song that just kind of resembled, he got my attention again. I came back to the Lord in my 30s, but it was only because something that was planted in me at an early age. And I had this joy that nobody could steal, and I wanted to share it with everybody. And so that the whole like lyric to that song just kind of came out of that, and this experience and this just memory as a kid of going to these churches and finding my own voice. And then a friend of mine was like, "You kind of got this voice that sounds like you have an old church choir singing it." I was like, well, let's write a song called Old Church Choir. So that was it.
There's another song of yours, To the Table, that is becoming a favorite, certainly of mine and a lot of other people. How about that one? I mean, it's a deep song.
It is, and to be honest with you, that song, me and my wife a few years ago were watching, I don't know if anybody else is like us, but when you go to Netflix, you can't find anything to watch and you just look through stuff for hours. And we found a movie called Ragamuffin. It was a story of Rich Mullins.
Right.
And I just remember watching that movie and just being floored by just this guy who just always felt he wasn't worthy enough for God to love him. And I took that idea. I actually ended up going out and buying the book after I watched the movie and read the book, and then I went to Nashville one week and had the opportunity to write with a great songwriter by the name of Tony Woods. And I was just explaining this idea to him. I said, I want to write a song called To the Table, but I don't want it to come off like a communion song. I said, can we do that and not make it feel like it has to be used for communion? And he was like, I think so. And I just explained to him this idea that I had of this table that just stretched for miles, that this was the picture of grace. Like, God's got a table, he's prepared a place for you and a chair. It's got your name on it. It's up to you to come pull that chair out, have fellowship with him. He used so many things in the Bible, where he taught around a meal, and he taught, And so I said, I want to just present this picture of God's grace through this song called To the Table. And the song just kind of grew as we talked about it, and he's really good at taking your ideas and helping you put that and painting a picture with it. And so I wanted the song to be something that was really like when you sing it and you hear the words, like you're seeing this picture of grace that God's done for us. And so that song for me, probably one of my favorites on the record, and I've used it a lot in church over the last couple of years. I actually started playing it before we put it on the record, but we would use it for an invitation song a lot, and it's been a really good song for me. Yeah.
So we've talked about the songs, and we've gotten bits and pieces of your life and your story and your experiences as we talked, but can we rewind a bit and just kind of hear from you, your story, and just how all this came to be?
Yeah, so like I said, I grew up in a little bitty town in northeast Arkansas. Just to put in perspective, most people know where Memphis is. I'm about an hour north of Memphis. And it was pretty much just perfect childhood. I had a great family. My dad led worship in church part-time. My mom sang at church. I was into sports, and I thought that was going to be my ticket out of the small town into the big city. And so everything in my life revolved around sports and church. My first concerts I remember going to as a kid were Petra and DeGarmo and Key and things like that. But in my teenage years, I discovered, rock and roll, and got to run around with some friends whose parents weren't in church, and just kind of, I made some bad choices, and all the things that I'd worked so hard to get in my life up into my senior high year. I had a Division I basketball scholarship offer. Colleges recruiting me, and my senior year in high school made some pretty poor choices and ended up quitting school over some drug issues, and it was crushing to me and to my family. I felt like a failure, and I was all in the news in small town, and everybody knew who I was and my family. And instead of turning to the Lord, which was what my family had taught me to do, I turned to drugs and alcohol, and kind of just went into this depression that I didn't even know what depression was. I had everything handed to me growing up, and I sit out a year, and I met a guy who got me a chance to go down and try out at a junior college, and I ended up getting a scholarship to go play in this junior college, and I got 3 hours away from home with a bunch of other guys who were doing the same thing I was doing. It turned into this, all-star party team 24/7, and man, I just lost sight of, what I'd been taught. And the day before my very first basketball game, my freshman year, I was just walking through some plays, and I jumped up, landed on a guy's foot, tore 5 ligaments in my ankle, and I set out my freshman year not being able to play sports, and my roommate had this old Harmony guitar that he had brought down from his hometown, and he was just staring at me, and I thought, I'm gonna teach myself how to play that guitar. And I went and got a chord chart, posted it on my wall, sit at the edge of my bed for an entire year just learning how to play guitar, and I fell in love with it. Unfortunately, I was also in love with this other lifestyle, and now I could justify this lifestyle with playing music because I was going to be a rock star. I didn't want to be a basketball player anymore. And so for the next 7 or 8 years of my life, I played music anywhere and everywhere I could go, trying to get people to listen to my songs. And towards the end of my 20s, I met some guys. We formed a band and recorded a record in Memphis, and pretty much immediately it took off. We got signed to a booking agency in Europe. We started touring Europe, and we thought we had made it, you know. Here we are living this awesome lifestyle now. We're getting to go. Everybody thinks we're living this awesome lifestyle. Really and truly, we're paying every weekend to go out and play and party and coming back and working our real jobs and then taking off and leaving our families. And it just turned into a vicious cycle. And at that point, I was in probably some of the darkest days of my life, just living pretty reckless. And I remember one of the guys in my band had started going to this church, and one night we were talking about it in a hotel room, and I was like, I'm ready to be done with this. Like, and I kind of knew he wasn't somebody that would take the step first. And so he was talking to me, kind of opening up to me about it, and so he invited us to come to church. And we went, and I just remember walking in the first time thinking, this is exactly where we're supposed to be at. But we had a tour booked in Europe for a month coming up. We'd been going to church for a month. I convinced myself I could go to Spain. I'm gonna be fine. I've been in church, like I can be good. And we leave on this tour, and immediately I fall right back into the same old patterns, the same old Zach. And I'm thinking, you know, I've got to get together. My wife, I think we're about to call it quits, and I'm about to lose my kids, you know. And so we're driving across Spain one day, 8-hour drive. I've got headphones on, and I just noticed that the bus is pretty calm, and that's usually not how it is. It's usually a lot of stuff going on, and I thought, what in the world's going on? So I pulled off my ears, and our bus driver was, he was just like scanning stations, and I heard Redeemed by Big Daddy Weave come across the radio station. And I was just like, I knew it was a Christian song because my dad had listened to Christian music on his job site, and I'd worked construction for him for 15 years. So I knew the music, but I'd never heard the song, and it just spoke to me. I got to my hotel, and I called my wife. I said, look, I'm done with the band. I'm quitting. I'm coming home, canceling our shows. And she was like, whatever. Like, you're not going to do that. And I did. I mean, that was exactly what I did. I came home. I just remember falling on my hands and knees and asking her and my kids to forgive me, and I was going to be a better dad. And I waited until everybody got up and got to school and got to work that day. And I just had that very first moment for me where I was actually face on the floor, like, God, I cannot do this anymore. Like, if there's something inside me that you can use for you and your kingdom, like, I don't care if it's finishing construction and not playing music. Like, I'm done with this life. And I put music down for like 6 months and didn't play anything. And I was walking around one day on a job site with my dad, and I just started having these words coming to my head, and it was, you know, kind of Christian lyrics for songs. And I was like, and I tried to start writing songs, but they weren't sounding the way I wanted them to. And so I thought, well, I can still play this style of music I was playing before, but just do this. And you know, if people like it, they do. If not, at least I'm happy, and I'm not doing it for anything other than that. And so within a year of going to this church, our church had asked me to launch a campus with them and be a worship leader. And I thought, there's no way I'm a worship leader. Like, I'm still, in my mind, I thought I was this rock star. And I just remember the first time I led worship at church. It was the first time I was ever on stage, and I didn't feel like I was faking it or had to perform for anybody. I could just be me and close my eyes and sing. I came home, I told my wife, you know, I was like, I love this. Like, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. And we got involved in prison ministry, and that was even more eye-opening of some of the music that I was taking over and sharing some new songs with these prison units and seeing people come to the Lord. And I was like, okay, God, I get it. Like, this is what you want me to do with my life. And about a year later, after being in that campus for a year, I met a guy in Nashville, came to a service. His wife's family were members of our church, and he took me out to coffee and said, I need to hear your story. he said, people don't sing like you that don't have a story. And I was like, really? And he said, yeah. And so I shared that story, what I'm sharing with you, with him. And he said, why don't you come to Nashville and we'll write some music together? And little did I know, 6 months later, we were going to write Chainbreaker together and be where I am today. So that's the story, yeah.
Wow. So where do you go from here? What's ahead?
Oh man, I'm pretty busy this year and looking already to be pretty busy next year. But I just think for me, this year's been a pretty amazing opportunity. I've been, had the opportunity to be out with Big Daddy Weave, share that story every night with those guys. Mm-hmm. Now out with Chris Tomlin, Phil Wickham. I'll be out with Casting Crowns through the fall and 10th Avenue North later in the year. I think God's given me such an opportunity to learn and grow from these guys, just to see how each one of them does ministry in their own way. I think it's kind of neat that I'm able to go out this first year with some of the elite Christian music artists and just learn from them and what they're doing and take little bits, little nuggets that I see from each one of them and use in my own ministry. And so I don't see any, I hope I don't have to slow down any. I love it, so who knows?
Yeah, that's great. So with that as kind of your home base, you are a worship leader. Do you have any final thoughts for our CCLI churches and worship teams and worship leaders out there?
Yeah, just in my few years, like I said, I've only led worship for about 3.5, 4 years at the church I was at. But I just know for me, one thing that, you gotta get to know your worship teams. Like, you can't just show up on Sunday and, be the guy that just hangs out in the green room. And in the same way, you get to know your congregation, know the people that you're leading and speaking to every Sunday. And then, I just remember having, for myself, I wanted everybody on my team, like, we need some accountability. Like, you can't expect to come and lead worship on Sunday morning if you're not in the Word during the week and living your life according to what we're trying to preach to everybody else. So, that, and just be genuine. Nobody wants to see somebody up on stage just putting on a show. And I think if you are genuine and you truly love what you're doing, and the Lord has given you that, gift and has called you guys to be vessels for Him, I think that comes off. Like, I don't think there's anything you have to do to try to, it's not smoke and mirrors and lights. Don't get me wrong, that's nice, but just sometimes it's nice to just grab an acoustic and lead a song and just be that very vulnerable person in front of everybody. So, yeah, thank you.
Zach, this has been a great time. Thanks for being here. It's been great getting to know you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate
and thank you for watching. Take care.